All right, guys, I'm thrilled. We're going to have a meaty conversation today with my friend, founder of Betches, podcaster, amazing news resource, in my opinion, and recently author, Sami Sage.
Thank you.
Welcome to my podcast.
I am thrilled to be here. We have so much to talk about.
So much to talk about. Having followed Betches from in college, I remember when, let me just fangirl for a second. I remember specifically hunching over my enormous laptop that weighed 10 pounds.
Yeah.
All of us, we'd be like, there's a new one, because I don't know if you guys remember the list. Remember the list?
Oh,
and
yeah.
It was Diet Coke. And we still in my friend group say, tan your back Sundays. Mm-hmm. But those were the days, man. The internet was so nice then.
It was so fun and not so serious, and you had an on and an offline life, and it was very clear.
Yeah.
And I still to this day say that cutting lines was my finest work ever.
100%.
And I know there are people who will know the reference I'm making.
100%. Yep. Yeah. No, it was the best of times. It really was.
Truly.
But now you kind of have this new online role, which I'm loving. And I'm loving that you have, grown into this amazing resource for people. You do morning announcements, which I listen to often. If you guys don't know and listen to morning announcements, it's 5 minutes. What?
Yeah. 5 minutes. You get the news.
What you need to know, just so you when someone says something, you're not like, huh, what's going on? Where? And it's great because it's brief. You kind of really nailed that people just want to know what's going on, which is awesome.
That's what we always wanted, people to be able to talk about the news without seeming like an idiot.
Right.
And hear it and learn it in an interesting way that relates to them, because I feel like there's so much, people don't think news and politics are related to them, or that or maybe they don't see how the things in their lives are actually a reflection of what's happening in the news.
Right. Exactly.
So it's kind of...
No, it's great. What was there a turning point when you decided to grow this vertical of Betches, and where have you always been interested in politics, or how did you take the charge of this new arm of it?
So we started it in 2015, 2016, just because the environment, the discourse was Trump was the nominee, and all of a sudden. So, okay, going back, I always really was very interested in politics and news. I don't know if it was just sort of by osmosis. I lived with my grandparents, so they always had it on. Old people are always watching the news. So it was always just on in my house. And I was always very interested in it. I watched The Daily Show growing up, Bill Maher, when he first went on HBO, and I didn't even know what they were talking about. But because I always followed it, it's like a story to me. It's sort of following your favorite Real Housewives. And you could skip, a season or a few episodes, but you come back and you know what's going on. And I think maybe it started out as a way for me to feel more control over the world. If I knew what was going on, what was happening, I could be more safe, maybe safe. I don't know, because you might say oh, if you know everything, it's not good.
Right.
But I think about it's always been very clear to me that what happens in Congress and our government is really actually affecting us. And I think it's really interesting that we're recording this as this United CEO thing is happening, because one of my first exposures to this was that my brother had autism, and it was the early 90s, so it wasn't it wasn't known and understood the way it is today, and there weren't really treatments. And
Sure.
I remember my mom pleading with the insurance companies to cover his therapy or to try a specialist. And it was very scary, because when you're 5, you're oh my God, are we going to be bankrupt? Are we going to, is he going to be okay? And from the very beginning, I feel I understood that was something that actually made or broke your life. And that those things didn't just happen by accident. And I think that's kind of how I became interested enough to be engaged with it permanently. And then in 2015, 2016, so I had, after following, you kind of realize that they're all just Real Housewives in suits with
it's true.
fake rules, and now they're just exposing themselves for that. So when Trump came on the scene and they started really becoming that, it became a really easy fodder for joking about.
Right.
And that was the idea in the beginning. It was a gateway to hard news. You can joke about this. You can laugh about these clowns and their hypocrisies. And that was the idea behind Betches News. And that is really what we hope to kind of be for people. It's we're not doing reporting. We're not a newsroom. We're sharing the information with you so that you can get it, and hopefully in an entertaining way. So that's why I put some jokes in the morning announcements when I can.
No, I love the jokes. I need a little levity because I always listen to it like when I'm doing my skincare in the morning or getting ready, and I'm like, I like a little joke, and it's very in your tone,
and then it's over,
and then
you
it's
know
over.
what you need to know.
You just kind of know exactly. Yeah. No, it's so funny what you said about how like you miss a season and then you come back to it, because I'm someone who has kind of swung in and out of being engaged politically. I think I, like many people, had the same wake up call for like in 2016. I kind of started to get engaged for the first time listening to political podcasts. You're older, yeah.
And we were that age where it's like, oh, this is relevant, and I am not insulated enough to get it.
Yeah, I mean, to be totally honest, and this is shameful, but I think for a good part of my young life, I didn't feel like politics affected me, which is horrendous.
Well,
and
is it
privilege
shameful?
Is showing, but
well, is it shameful, or like what's the point? Like, I'm sure there's people who want to be like, well, you should be ashamed because it makes them feel better because they knew. But let's be honest, a third of this country didn't vote.
Right.
So many people didn't even know Joe Biden dropped out. It was like, so you're saying, oh, it's shameful I didn't know politics affected me. They still don't. There are people who still do not know, and still don't believe it, and still believe that they are powerless and that the system is just undefeatable. And that is true, but I think that is partly because people don't engage in it.
Yeah.
And they feel like, oh, I'm so stupid if I don't have this knowledge. It's like, no, you're not stupid. This is purposefully esoteric and out of your realm. And
totally.
If you want to talk about like the campaigns, there's a reason why, one of the reasons why I think they lost is the Kamala Harris campaign lost is because they were just like deeply out of touch. Like they only speak to their own people. Yeah. They don't know what everyone's just one vote.
Right.
And they don't seem to, I don't know. There was just this missing piece of like, oh, you should get more.
I agree. We're gonna dig into that, but for sure. But yeah, I think it was like I didn't think that it, not only that it didn't affect me, but I also very much had the mindset of like, well, I can't make a difference and it doesn't matter. But I think, I find that to be untrue now more than ever. And I think, we have a responsibility to know what's going on. But it's so funny because I got so into it during that time. And then I kind of just almost tapped out because it was such a just like inflamed 4 years, and it was so tiresome. And of course, the media does, they try to polarize, they try to inflame, they try to enrage. And I just kind of tapped out and took a step back, still knew what was going on. And now I feel very much engaged again. So it's interesting that you had that analogy of, the Real Housewives, because it's like you come back and you're like, oh, you're still this and you're still that, whatever.
You're still old. You're still in office.
So do you find it hard to speak up online about things that matter to you? And people find the news, it's a two-part question. People find the news so polarizing that even you just stating a fact can elicit an crazy response. Even if sometimes I'll hear you on the morning announcements, you'll say a simple fact, and I think in my head, she's gonna get a DM about that because someone interpreted that as some sort of, So do you find it difficult, or have you built up a shell?
Yes and no. I have a little shell. It's like an M&M shell.
Yeah.
It's kind of,
a light candy coating.
There.
Yeah.
I have a light candy coating. Exactly. But, I try to really take people when they say something to me seriously. And sometimes I know, you have to kind of know when it's worth taking seriously and where they're in good faith versus this person just wants to have an attitude and probably has been watching me and hates my shit. And it's difficult. It's just hard to be an online figure.
For sure.
It's hard to have your face out there and to put yourself out there and not be anonymous and just know that you are the substance of conversation. Part of me is okay, but okay. I go back and forth because culturally I do think we have had some times where it was speaking up is the greatest thing you can do and say the wrong thing and say the edgy thing, and then it's oh, you must say everything and you must start with 6 different disclaimers. I went to a private school and well, I know you have to kind of be really super careful, and then you strip what you're saying of substance. I think I've become pretty good at knowing when it's worth saying something, because sometimes I'm just I actually don't have to express an opinion. Who cares? Because some things I just don't really feel that strongly about.
Right.
And I'm like, why do we always have to be having a reaction to everything?
Yeah.
That's kind of what is so annoying. Like,
Yeah.
why does everyone have to react to everything?
Yeah, it's funny what you said about the disclaimers, and I'm really bad with the disclaimers. I think it's a product of getting canceled, that I'm just in the wake of that. I'm like, but now post-election, I'm looking at it in a new light, because exactly. And I'm like,
but what people liked about you in the beginning was that they perceived you did not give a fuck.
I know. Well, turns out a cancellation will make you give a fuck.
Well, here's the thing. It's okay to, like, I think accountability, quote unquote, and knowing your blind spots and learning them is a good thing. But do I think that requires like an extreme pile on? And I say to people, I'm like, Tinx's cancellation led to the snark like revolution.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like that before. It was that, and then it was like, let's find what all these other influencers are doing wrong that's like that. But I think it was this feeling of like people they never liked the person who they sense gets a little too big for their britches.
For sure.
In their perception.
Yeah.
It's like, why should this person who is not morally perfect?
No, and it was never, it was never about the tweets. It was about like, I got too big too fast, and I think in my opinion, I mean, yeah, they were nasty. They were nasty for sure. But
well, here's the thing. Everyone projects perfection. Like they thought they knew you from online. So they project, someone might have said, oh, she might say that and I wouldn't it wouldn't bother me. Or she might have said that 10 years ago and it wouldn't bother me. But people feel like, oh, that's at odds. So she must have been faking it.
The craziest part is now in the context of this election, where I think a lot of Democrats, and everyone in general looks at the party, and a big portion of the blame goes to what people are calling the orthodoxy of the left, right? When I think about the fact that the big hoopla was that I think I liked one Trump tweet, maybe two, maybe liked or whatever, two, okay? And it was like, you're secretly a Republican. Someone, on the dark web added up how many tweets I had liked of Bernie, which was like 80, and I had two of Trump, but whatever, that wasn't the story.
Well, that is a story too, because people don't understand the overlap between Trump and Bernie, but
sure, but that's not where I'm going with this. The fact that, and then I came out and I said, I've never voted for Donald Trump. I don't agree with him. I don't know why I like that, yada, yada, yada. The fact that was shunned, and that was like, she must be a Republican. I'm like, well, the proof is in the fucking pudding, because if you take every single person who's ever liked a Trump tweet and you say you're not good enough to be a Democrat, then you're not good enough to, well, look where we fucking are now.
Yeah.
You made everybody feel bad about themselves, and guess who they voted for? I'm sorry to make it about me, but this is my goddamn show. And that was actually a really good point illustration of the orthodoxy of the left.
I think it is. There's a phrase, it's an old phrase, like politics is downstream from culture.
Right.
And that's why I like it, because if you ask, it's not, I don't care, like policy, like I can't get into it. I'm like, just fucking fix the problem.
Right.
Like, I don't care how you do it. Just like fix it and stop fucking it up. Like stop screwing people over. Like, it's that hard. So what I think about is like, what really interests me, and that's why news is very much like imbued with pop culture for me, is that everything that happens in pop culture and in culture and the way people talk, it seeps into what will ultimately become the political conversation. And that drives the political conversation. It's all about the mood. And the fact that people were, it wasn't just you. I think you were like not like the first, because obviously there were cancellations, but I think of like the influencer world, you were kind of like that one that happened. And it becomes about finding these things for everybody. But what I think has switched is that now I see there are girls who I've only ever heard of them because people snark about them.
Totally.
And then I'm like, who gives a shit if people quote unquote hate them? Like, there's plenty of people who like them.
Yeah.
You're literally buttering their bread by talking about them on these snark pages. And if you really hate them and think they're so morally like horrible, then you should just actually stop engaging and following.
Right.
And if you have a problem with this culture, your snarking about it is actually just enhancing it. You're not holding anyone accountable because they don't have any incentive.
It's not about accountability. Yeah, no. It's not. But look, all that to say, post-election, I'm like, I'm going to say whatever I want and I'm going to talk about it. And if you find it flawed, then I'd be happy to debate it with you if you're a normal person. And if you speak to me, call my show, write a comment in a polite way, well, let's talk about it. But I'm like, I think for 2 years, I was so like shackled by the fear of like, oh my God. And then I'm like, oh my God, Tinx, first of all, it's not about you. Second of all, it's better to just get it out there again. So I'm like, whatever, let's talk. Let's discuss.
I think that is the move because, look, I think that most people who are acting in good faith, which I know that you are, is that you're not just like, oh, I'm going to say anything because I can.
No.
It's more like people had thoughts and they're like, better not say that because people are going to think I'm coming from here and I'll have to say this. And it's just like, why would I focus on that when it's just going to bring upon people, critiquing when I could just focus on something else. That's always been but then I'm like, why have I decided to sidestep so many things? And it's like, because I don't want to get into the back and forth about like some dumb shit that I know is going to come up. And it's like, that's not productive. And it's not like you'll ever win. And that's what I think is like people don't get is like, we were only ever going to end up here with Trump having won and then people having gone back to like, I don't care about like all the people who were doing performative wokeness will stop performing their wokeness. But what I hope is that people will focus on what actually is like productive.
What needs to matter. Yeah.
Yes.
And I take that point. I think some of it, like, I get it. This is the thing. I'm not a delusional, diehard Democrat. I think that we need to take a long, hard look in the mirror and say, what the fuck? We've lost ourselves completely. Mm-hmm. So I get that. Then, I
do think this idea of like everyone exists on the right or left, that's like gone now.
I agree that. I agree with that too. And I think that we need to more fluidly discuss. Like I grew up more conservatively. I never voted for Trump. I really liked part of a lot of what Bernie had to say. To say that you are 100% right or left, you're a fucking idiot if you're that person. Why do you think people find it so hard to talk about politics today? Online, with their friends, with their families. It's always a difficult topic.
Do you mean like with people they disagree with or just in general?
I mean both, I think.
Okay, well, I think there's different things for different people. Like it seems really stressful. Like I feel really at home talking about it and even getting like a little contentious with somebody but not in a like more like, oh, this is a passionate conversation, not like a fight. Because I feel like I know, I care, I have enough like grasp on it. I think most people don't, and that's okay because each thing could be its own field of study. And like I have a very like loose working knowledge of stuff, but I just think that most people really don't. And that is why you only have like this very myopic view from inside Washington and inside the campaigns.
Sure.
Because they know like these little details that no one else knows. And what I say is that like Americans get their political perspectives like a Monet. And the people working on the campaign think they're getting it like a photograph.
Sure.
And that is like, people just kind of hear things. There's like, oh, Joe's old, he fell. Like, it's all very like vague.
Sure.
And so I think once people realize like you're in a conversation, it's like all just sort of like, what is anyone even saying?
Right.
Right. And then, okay, then let's say you have an argument, with someone that's a family member or friend. And I loved your episode on should you cut off relationships? Because I feel very strongly that generally you shouldn't. And unless like, circumstances are like really, really bad.
Yeah.
I think that it needs to come from a place of like, we're not trying to win a debate. We're just talking because like no one's going to win this conversation. And even if you did, it wouldn't go anywhere.
Right.
You're not getting like policy passed because you won your conversation.
Right.
And I think just like trying to find common ground. Something we talk about in the book is that like just having conversations about stuff, what your values are, that's the best way to get people turned out to vote or involved in something. I think everyone thinks it's going to be like, oh, this national race or like this Senate race even, barely. But like so much of politics is local. Like what's happening at your kid's school is happening at your school board meeting.
Right.
If someone's driving too quickly on your street, that is like your town. So many benefits can be made at the local and state level. And I think people don't necessarily realize how much their lives are affected by that.
Sure.
Versus Washington where nothing gets done.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so to touch on that, you talk a little bit about more you shouldn't cut people out because that was the conclusion that I came to, and I think that in the wake of the election, a lot of people, I'm like also chronically online, so I spend a lot of time on TikTok, and it's like a lot of people, fully cut out family members. And I understand, especially if you're someone who thinks you're going to be directly affected by Trump's next, almost said reign, next term. I understand. It did feel like a really emotional time. I was the embarrassing liberal crying on the internet. Like it was a very high tense couple of weeks. But when the dust settled, I was like, I really want to be part of the solution. I really don't believe in cutting people out. I really do believe in having open dialogues with people who have 180-degree views from you. So talk about your perspective. And if you can give you need to read Sami's book, Democracy in Retrograde. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Many tips for conversations,
exactly.
Like actual things you can say.
So give us a couple of things from the book.
So okay, we actually have like ways to phrase things, like to de-escalate conversations, like, maybe we should come back to this later, or like, I understand how you feel that way. There are more like particular examples, but okay, look, if someone's like, let's say your parents don't accept your sexuality, I understand if you need to cut them off.
For sure.
People
By the way,
cut their parents
100%.
off. Yeah, like people cut their parents off for personal reasons having nothing to do with politics. So I understand if it's like, oh, this is a situation that's like deeply toxic for me. It's also okay to be like a little mad at your family, like
for sure,
for a bit. Like I think that's, it really depends what kind of family you come from. Some are more toxically positive and like that won't be okay. But I think like protecting yourself is okay, but I don't really believe in, I think that people are cutting their nose to spite their face if they want to cut relationships off, because people's opinions change, but the time that you shunned them, like personally, will remain with them, and you are cutting them off. And it's like, I think the practice of forgiveness is a good one for people. Like, we're not going to get out of this mood, whatever this is, with this type of contention.
I agree.
With our neighbors. And it's like, you'll also never persuade anyone. So if that's your goal, you'll never persuade anybody.
No, I think you make a really important distinction. If your family they don't accept who you are, whatever that is, your sexuality and so on, that's one thing, and you got to protect your peace. But for me, think who I'm widely speaking to when I say don't cut these people off, are people who you generally have a lot in common with, your family or your friends, but you just voted opposite ways. Like, to me, I want to create change. I would like to see the Democrats back in the White House. I would also like to see a return to civility. I would also like to see a return to, just having more dignity in politics. And to me, the only way that I know how to operate is to be the change that I want to see. So that's who I'm speaking to. It's like, you have friends, or you have, your family, maybe you have a very traditional, conservative parents. This is a common setup for people in America today, the more conservative parents. And you're kind of like, I voted differently, but I see where they're coming from, or whatever. Those are the conversations that you need to have, because that's how I feel like minds get changed, and we grow the common ground.
And I also think if we want to talk about like using our privilege, it's easy for us
100%.
to say like, okay, well, we can just kind of coexist because
it's so true. So
we don't have XYZ issues. So I think it's like, okay, well, what we're going to do is say we'll be those people who will be that bridge, because we can face that emotionally,
totally,
without a threat.
Totally.
And I think that like that's okay. Like us saying to people who really have a totally different situation, like, I get if those people are just in a different
it's a different
mindset,
ball
game.
That's well said.
So it's like, for us, the advice, and this is what I think kind of was the issue with like the 2021 mood, is like, not everything is supposed to be for everybody.
Right.
And that's okay. And like, inclusion is good, but that doesn't mean that like everyone should get the same advice.
Right.
So I think it's like knowing our audiences. Like, I wish there was just like more acceptance of like, okay, this thing is for this people, and if there's not something for you, it's not that we're trying to like leave you out. It's that like, I don't want to speak to your situation that I don't really know, and I shouldn't be like projecting my privilege onto you.
100%.
So it's like, we're speaking for our people who can, I think, have these conversations and like be safe enough in them to like be at odds, and it's okay. And that's like the worst thing you feel. That's like,
you'll survive.
You'll be okay.
Yeah. Do you think that we as humans have a moral obligation to know what's going on in the world?
I mean, like, what does that mean? Like, at what level? I think
I think a lot of people are like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know what's going on, and I don't want to be engaged. Do you think we have a moral obligation too?
I don't know about like moral obligation because like I don't know what else these people are doing. You know? Are they like volunteering at their local soup kitchen and they don't want to like tune into the news maybe, but like okay, I'll say I think we have a moral obligation to other human beings.
Right.
And
that's a great way to put it.
And and I think I personally think because of just like and this is something in the book, we try to help people like figure out how to find their place in our citizenship or citizenry by figuring out where your resources, your skills, and your interests intersect. Mm-hmm. So like, what can you do? What are you good at? And what needs to be done? Mm. And I feel like for me, knowing what's going on can be fruitful and I can share it. And I feel like sometimes I'll be like, I can't believe like other people didn't know about this. I should make a video. Like,
right.
And that, okay, so like I'm, being helpful in that way. But like lots of people just know what's going on and then they become internet trolls. So like, what are they doing?
Right.
So it's like not black and white, but I think people know at heart if what they're doing is like productive. I don't know. You have to be really honest with yourself, which is hard.
Do you ever find it too much? I mean, being so entrenched in current affairs, do you ever get depressed? Do you ever feel like, oh my God, this is just hopeless? Do you feel sad?
I have.
Yeah.
I went on SSRIs.
Oh, perfect.
But I needed those anyway.
There you go.
No, that like, yes, but not in a way like if I did, I would stop.
Yeah.
That's I would find a way to stop. Sometimes I'm more like emotionally invested versus like, okay, I'm aware. Like I can go on vacation. I do my podcast and like, I'm just like, okay, those are my hours and these are my non-hours. But like, sometimes I'm just like, why can't it get fixed? Like someone needs to fucking fix it. Like why? That's what gets to me. I'm like, why? Why is this happening? Why is this okay? And really what it comes down to is like our politicians are just not accountable to us. They're accountable to money.
They don't care. This is the thing. And I'm like, I think in the wake of the murder of the United Healthcare CEO, I think the one thing a lot of it's come out of it online. I don't know how, deep you guys are in the TikToks and the memes and whatever and Twitter or whatever. But like, I think that people, no matter what their political alignment, feel very like lost and alone right now and feel completely abandoned by their politicians.
They are.
And I feel that. And I'm like, that's why I'm kind of like, you guys, we have the same goals ultimately for the most part. And I think, a lot of the time it is the politicians who try to divide us because it's a good way to make someone afraid is a great way to get their support. To make someone hateful is a great way to get their support.
That you're exactly right. I feel that. Like I feel the pot bubbling over like every day online. Like the fact that people are willing to publicly break this taboo around cheering death is so scary to me karmically. And I don't know, I'm not like a particularly sensitive person. Like I will joke about almost anything in private.
Of course.
But like the fact that people are willing to attach their names on Facebook to celebrating death in any form is really scary because it's like, okay, so you think this healthcare CEO has profited off of the death of your loved ones? And like he has. But who gets to be the judge? You get to play God now and kill someone. It's like, okay, I see how he could reason his crime, but like, what about the person who decided, like, I think about, and this is really, really dicey, but I think about Gaza. And I don't mean to say like a particular viewpoint, but when you hear how each side talks about the other, it is like you should just all die. And that is scary and crazy because you're talking about people who were just born into a place. And it's like this overall like lack of realizing that like, oh, that's a human with a life and they are part of this world. And like, I just like feel like karmically I can't get behind it. It's not necessarily any individual politician. It's like the whole system.
The whole system
corrupt.
Is completely corrupt. And I really do feel that way. I'm like, I don't feel for the most part when I see politicians that they are that they want the best for anybody apart from themselves. It's become this complete freak show of and I mean, think about what you have to do to become a really high standing politician.
You have to have such an ego.
You have to have such an ego, and you have to just be so ruthless that it feels. That's when I fall into the helplessness. Is I'm like, I see very few people where I'm like, yeah, they really genuinely want the best for all people. Because the thing about a really good politician is they have policies that maybe lean one way or another, but they want the best for everybody genuinely. And I don't see that many people on my TV screen that I'm like, yeah, you're.
Are there ones who you do see?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like Pete Buttigieg.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think he's genuinely a good. I think he's a good person.
Yeah.
Let me say that. Yeah, I think he's a good person.
I also think that
I thought Kamala Harris was a good person.
I still do, and I think that
which is why as well. Yeah. Even though I think the Democratic Party is deeply flawed, I thought she was a decent human being. I thought she genuinely cared about people and didn't have like any hate in her heart, which I think is what we kind of needed right now. So again, I'm not like delusional. I'm not like, oh yeah, Democrats like a mess. Totally. She's a good person.
I agree. And I think that it's like this, there is no incentive to be a good person. And it's not just like they're incentivized to be, they're literally financially incentivized to stay in office.
Exactly.
So there's like, what I really would love to talk about is publicly, not necessarily on the show, but a congressional stock trading ban. Imagine if you could go to Congress, if you could go to work and you could say, I want a briefing report on the telecom companies. I want a briefing report on the pharma companies. I want to hear how they're responding to XYZ regulation. And then you can go call your banker up and be like, there's like some trouble. This company had this issue. Like, dump that. If you track Nancy Pelosi's stock performance, yeah, okay. So what is the incentive for, and she just announced she's going to run for re-election. What is the incentive for anyone to get out of office when you're getting the hot stock tips?
Totally.
She's been in office for years. She has $250 million.
Yeah, you're there fine. Exactly. It's the financial incentive. And,
Also, why not retire? Like, go live on a fucking island.
Yeah. No, I know.
That's what I would do.
Back to Kamala. So it's a broad question about why she lost. But as a segue to this discussion, I'm so curious your thoughts on the Manosphere podcast and the role they played in the outcome of the election. I very naively I wasn't tuned into the power of the Manosphere till the election. And now I see it. And now that I'm like on that algorithm and I'm seeing it, I'm like, I am so shook. And I don't think a lot of, I don't know actually, but I don't think a lot of, I'm going out on a limb here, millennial women, maybe in my community or whatever, I don't think a lot of them are aware because it is just a different corner of the internet. And I'm not talking about the Rogans. I'm talking about,
the whole thing.
The whole thing and down the tree, down from like, even kids from below voting age, the type of content that young boys are listening to as they're growing up.
Biohacking, day trading.
Yeah, all this crypto, the whole thing. I didn't get it. And now I'm like, oh, okay.
What about these like young kids who think that they're going to grow up and become influencers and day traders?
Yeah.
And they do not, there's no planning for any sort of skill or job. And yes, I agree. I'm with you. I overlooked the impact of the Manosphere because again, like this is not my world. And I feel like millennials were the best generation. No offense.
100%.
Because we know how to like tell what's real on the internet. But the Manosphere, I also did not see that it was so influential on people's like, not on their like thinking because I knew that, but that it would get them out to vote.
Totally.
That's what it was. I knew they were
really
in
galvanized a lot of young men who I think would have stayed home otherwise had they not been consuming this media for the past 4 years.
Right.
I think it played, impossible to tell, but an absolutely huge role in the turnout.
Can we talk about this for like women who are in their 20s? Because I imagine a lot of people are listening to this who are in their 20s. And like, what is that like to have that be your dating pool?
I get this question a lot. I'll be like, I found out he listens to Rogan, or I found out,
I don't
this
think
and
listening to Rogan needs to be like.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
By the way, I want to be super clear.
Yeah.
I neither do I. I really, I don't think he's all bad. I really don't. It's
I just think that's not the one. It's like if you listen to Rogan occasionally, like, okay, he has people on. Like it's if you are in this deep
it's
and you think
exactly.
you're gonna make your money day trading.
Exactly. It's like if you meet a guy, and we've all met these type of guys, especially if you live in like, you know, a big coastal town, these guys who subscribe to the thinking. As you said, everybody listens to Rogan someday. Everybody listens to everybody sometimes. It's the way that they wholeheartedly subscribe to this manosphere thinking without analyzing any of it, without saying, oh, well, he can say, you know, Elon can say that because he's literally a billionaire and that doesn't completely apply to me. That lens doesn't always slot into place.
No.
And that's what's scary.
And they'll believe anything because what the problem, you know, everyone's like, oh, the mainstream media, such failure, so terrible. Obviously, there's big issues with the mainstream media, but they're regulated by the FCC. So they can't just like say shit. It has to go through legal. It has to be sourced. Everyone in this manosphere can just say shit.
Right.
It doesn't have to be real or true. And like, if you subscribe to this, then you're getting a whole ideology, even if there are deep inconsistencies in it.
Right.
But you're getting this great way to make sense of the world. And guess what? They're going to tell you that you're amazing and you should be on the top of every pyramid.
Yeah.
Whereas in the mainstream media, you might actually have to have time for like to hear from a black woman. God forbid.
Right. No. Yeah. I was going to ask you what do you think? First of all, do you think the manosphere is a reaction to the decline in mainstream media?
Yeah.
And also what bolsters the manosphere so much aside from the fact that it makes young men really feel seen? I mean, I'm on Scott Galloway's dick. Like, I love him more than life. So to me, it's a direct reaction of, you know, the decline, the rise in loneliness amongst young men. Suicide is up for young men. Drug use, lower college admissions rate, lower college graduating rate, everything. And it's like this has given them a church, so to speak, that makes them feel completely seen, makes it feel like they have no accountability. It's not their fault. And if you just come in, it's nice and warm in here and we'll make you feel good.
Yeah, exactly. So it's the algorithms that are made by men of this ideology. When you think about that, like, I mean, this was years ago, but I remember someone telling me she got her account suspended because she wrote men are trash on Facebook, like fully suspended. And Scott Galloway, love Scott Galloway. I really embarrassed myself. I went up to him at the DNC. I was like, I fangirled too hard, fangirled too close to the sun. I never go up to anybody.
What's he like?
Very nice guy. Very nice guy. I never go up to anybody because I'm like, but like him, I was like, I love your show. You have really impacted the way I think about things. And he's the only one who has been on this train of like for years now.
He's been it for years. He saw it before any of us. I feel like this election was the first time when people were like, whoa, maybe he's right. Like here it is.
Well, he was just so easy to be like, easy for you to say rich white man.
Totally.
But okay, so what? He's not real. He has no opinion. He can't help because he has that perspective.
Yeah, I see the argument a lot of people have online about like, oh, you know, Scott, a rich white man, is saying, you guys, the poor young white men aren't doing so well. I get that argument.
What is their issue with that?
That
he feels bad for them?
No, not that he feels bad for him, but that we have to, in order to like regulate and like bring it back to homeostasis, we have to center them. We have to somehow center them or somehow bolster them. And I take that point. But I think ultimately my priority lies in like the safety of women and like who this will hurt eventually, as we've seen in this fucking election, is women and other marginalized groups. So it's like not that I think we should cater to these, you know, young white men and make sure they're okay wrapped with their blankie and their mommy. It's that if we don't, I know who's going to suffer.
Right. Well, that's what people are saying is like, okay, I know exactly the argument you're saying. And what I wonder is like, okay, well, there's enough people to talk about everything. So if you don't want to center these white men, then just don't talk about them. And if you do want to be part of the solution, then engage in this conversation, because there should be enough people to solve more than one problem at once.
Yeah.
So I believe that we all have an obligation to each other to be effective in what we're doing.
Sure.
And if you're just trying to like make the popular point, like, oh, we should just worry about men more. Like, I get it. It's a funny joke. Sometimes I think like the snark that we've all gotten used to, like, I do it, being tonally snarky and like critical. It actually does kind of shut down conversation.
It does.
Because, yeah, like it's so easy to make a joke about that, like white man says what? But also, what are you going to do about it? Like, it's not okay. And the idea that like people should be allowed to suffer because they're white and they were born privileged is, I don't see, and I don't want to be like, oh, it's reverse racism, but I don't see how that's two wrongs make a right, And yeah, I think that this is a big problem that needs to be solved because lots of women are going to have sons.
Yeah. Yep. Do you
gotta
think
get Scott Galloway on here?
I know I need to, and I'm people are like, what do you think we should do? And I'm like, I agree with 99% of what Scott says. I hate to be I'm doing exactly what I said the young men are doing. I subscribe almost so wholeheartedly to his ideas,
but he's not like he's Manosphere.
No. I'm just saying, like, as in he could tell me to eat like trash, and I'd be like, okay, like if it will help everybody, I'll do it.
I have done his stock predictions, and I'm trying to think. There was like one that was good. I don't remember.
He's
what it
just
was
so
years
good.
Ago.
Do you think it's important that we find a Joe Rogan of the left?
I don't think that's gonna be I don't think that's gonna happen. Just practically, it's not like the left is like not good at monoculture because it becomes purity culture.
Totally.
Why couldn't Scott Galloway be the Joe Rogan of the left?
I know.
He should be.
But so, okay, let me ask you this, because I've been thinking about this. Just stay with me for a second on this question.
You could be the Joe. You know what I mean? It could be
why
not a woman? Joan Rogan of the left.
Totally. But why do you think it's mainly? I mean, this is on the one hand, it's like duh. On the other hand, I'm really curious for your deeper thoughts. Why do you think that it's mainly men, political, like personalities that bubble to the top? Like what would, because I was trying to imagine, I was like thinking about all of the, we have like the Pod Save America guys, there's Hassan, like there's people like that.
I've been wondering,
but they're all men, and it's like, and I was like, okay, you could say that Candace Owens, but not really, because she's more in actual politics. I'm talking about someone who is like a Rogan or whoever on either side. Why is there no woman like that? And I'm not really being like, why is there no woman? I'm genuinely on a deep level.
Why hasn't it happened?
Why hasn't it happened?
Okay, I wonder if it's like almost an evolutionary thing. Like they flock to the alpha, whereas women make villages. So like we like, we like our TV recapper, and we like our celebrity shit talker, and we like our dating podcaster, and we like our news person. And we find like I think women don't have to be as loud.
That's what I was like.
Yeah, and also I think like algorithmically, I just think like they do better. Like why the Pod Save America guys hit the timing perfectly.
So right, yeah.
And look, and even them who like get so much shit, it's not like their audience is small.
No.
So I think it is like men like. It's so much easier for them to just be like the captain,
to be all in. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
I know I was like, I hate to make these generalizations, but I know that's when I was really thinking about it. I was like, women were a little bit more discerning, and like, we look at someone, we're like, oh, I like her for this, but I don't like the, exactly as you said, I like to go to her for dating and this for this, but it's not such an all in buy-in. Whereas the way that I see, again, I know this is generalization, but like the way I see young men subscribe to the Rogans of the world, the Hassans of the world, like it is all, they're okay with all the buy-in, whereas
they're less nuanced thinkers. Like, I mean, think about like everything is sort of, you ask a man what he's thinking, like he can actually say nothing. He can actually and mean it. Like they mean it. And I also think men have more time. They have more time than women. Think about just the beauty appointments. That they never have. Think about the gossiping, the talking, the relationing, the scheduling of girls.
Statistically,
things.
men have fewer friends as well.
They have fewer friends. They have women. Again, generalization, tend to take on, if you're in a couple, tend to take on more, and not in my household, but tend to take on more like of the stuff that you need to do.
Yeah, if you have kids, you do the lion's share.
They're at work. Yeah, they're driving. They're commuting. They do their own thing. They don't like have all this, they don't have so much going on compared to women. Maybe this is general, but I think they just have more time.
I could talk to you about this forever, but I do want to hit one more topic before we have to wrap. So I know we've discussed together privately how scared we are for the future and how that affects our desire to have children. I think that's one of the hardest reasons to say publicly that you're reluctant to have children, because it feels like a judgment on people that have chosen to have children. Like, oh, you're not worried. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, this is one factor among many, and it's not what I would, why I say it to you, because I know we both sort of share this, and I know there are a lot of other people who share it. But like, if I wanted a kid if at any point I get to the point where I want a kid more than I am worried about the future because my desire overtakes, not that my worry lessens, it's like I would just do it.
Right. Like, that's an interesting way to put it. Yeah.
It's like it's one factor, but like if someone would be like, it's going to be fine, promise, would I be like, okay, I'm going to pop them out now? Like, no, because it's like, so I wouldn't say it to people because I wouldn't want them to get offended.
Yeah.
But I don't mean it in a way that it's like, oh, how stupid are you? You're going to leave your kids on this burning earth.
No. Of course not. Like, it probably will be fine. I'm just too anxious to, Yeah.
Yeah, but also, like, if you really wanted one, like,
I would do it. And you would do it. Yeah, that's a really good point.
You would just do it. So it's like, it's more like, oh, I don't want to have to worry about this,
Yeah.
It's scary. And I think people are scared for the future. And when you ask people who have kids, like, that's what they're most afraid of. And like, part of it is that, like, I'm scared of the worry of having a child that is like frightening to me.
Right. So I don't know your husband personally, but through Instagram, I really like the dynamic that you guys seem to have. And it seems like you've really built an intentional life. That's something that I always encourage everybody in this community to do, is live intentionally and build a life that works for you. Was that, how long have you guys been married?
4 years.
Was that something you discussed like in the beginning of getting married, or how did you navigate that? Because it seems like you have a life that you love and that you've really tailored it to both of you.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I will say he's younger than me. So by about 4.5 years.
Oh,
so like,
I didn't know that.
Don't be afraid to go younger or age, So I will say that's like one thing. So he, it's not like, it's not like all his friends are like now having, so he wasn't on the like, oh, we have to get married because everyone's getting married timeline. So we've always kind of like done our own thing. I think both of us are people who like, okay, I have this like joke with my friends that like when we were in college, the movie Water for Elephants was out and everyone was going to see it. And I was like, this movie looks fucking terrible. Like, I don't want to see this fucking movie. And apparently I said like, why would I go see this movie?
Right.
And so they to this day make fun of me when I like want to do my own thing, like be like, why would I see Water for Elephants? Like that. I was like saying like, why would I go see this movie? What I really meant was like, why would I go do something I don't want to do just because other people are doing it? And it like speaks to this kid thing where it's like when I'm around my friends and they're all talking about like kids stuff and they show pictures and they're cute, I'm like, oh, that's nice. I might want that. But really, I'm like, if that's the time I feel most strongly about having children, like that's not what I should have.
Right.
That's not a reason to have them because I like see my friends' cute kids. Like, and I think that both of us are sort of like of that mindset. It's like, okay, we can just do what we want. Like there's no one making the rules.
Yeah.
So I think we kind of align on that. And then that kind of just carries through all of our decisions. And then also like having your life like taken care of and like we both do well like financially and like health wise, thank God, like that enables like the ease that I think is perceptible. But yeah, I think like people can make like, I think something that's like very encouraging about the future is that there isn't just one path. There's not like get married, have 2.5 kids, get your picket fence, live in your starter home, then blah blah blah. Like I don't think we need to do that anymore.
No,
mostly because people can't.
Yeah,
but for the most part. But like,
do you see the average age of buying a home
59?
now? 59 in the U.S.
That's Social Security age, literally.
Well, say goodbye to Social Security.
Yeah, but that's fucking insane. But you know what that is? That's really people buying second homes.
Yeah.
It's wealthy old people buying second homes.
Yeah.
But like I think that like being more intentional I think is like really the key because we have been very intentional. Like there's not assumptions like, oh, we just like are going to do it that way.
Yeah. You do what you want. Yeah.
And I think everyone should.
And I think that's such an attractive and palpable actually quality in couples, but also like women. I think it really stands out when you're like, oh, you chose your choice. That's all I ever want from women. It doesn't matter one way or another. That's all I
feminism.
want is choose your choice and know exactly what your choice is and feel good about it. I think that just that's real feminism is choose your choice. You don't have to do anything. Choose your choice. And I always find that really attractive in other people and my friends, and I'm really gravitate towards people who live like that. So I very cool.
Yeah,
very cool. You seem to have a really great community of girlfriends that you keep in touch with, and you, like, I just saw you guys were on an annual girls trip, and something that we talk about and struggle with a lot in this community is like what I call the splinter era, when people do start going off in every different direction, and you know, people feel suddenly very far apart, and maintaining those relationships and kind of living through the natural ebbs and flows of female friendships. Can you talk a little bit about how you navigate this with your friend group and what has been helpful?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm again in this area, I'm also very lucky. I feel very lucky. My high school and college friends, like, all combined, because a lot of people from my high school went to college. We all went to college together. That's how Betches started. And then kind of everyone just like sort of combined. And obviously there's like closer and more distant people within the group. But we make an effort to, you know, like there's a lot of people who like, they won't go on vacation with other husbands, or like they don't like, they like really are afraid to like take any time away from whatever their responsibilities are, which I get, you know, it depends, but on a situation. But like, sometimes that's just fear or like lack of not wanting to leave your comfort zone. And I think that sometimes people don't necessarily realize like how valuable these friendships are, and like you only are going to get what you put into them.
Totally.
But also when you're talking about splintering, I think something that has been very meaningful is that like not every friendship being more distant has to be a bad thing.
Totally.
You can have a new type of relationship, and in some ways it's like when you both are on the same page about what that is, you become closer.
Yeah.
Because then you like have the connection that's real, you know what that connection is, and it's like, oh, that's a really stable connection because we're both
on the same page about it.
Yeah.
Did you read that article a while back? I can't remember where it was, about medium friends.
Yes.
I think it was, I don't know, maybe New York Times, but it's, you know, and the gist of it was the any agita that comes with friendships is usually because you're not on the same page about about what you mean to each other.
Yes.
And it's so true. Like I have friends where the vexing problem of medium friends, one of my favorite articles, I talk about it all the time, but
it's really good one.
You know, like I have friends where I love them so much, I don't talk to them, but we both are on the same page. When we see each other 2 times a year, there's no like, oh like I should be. It's like, enough with that. That shit drives me nuts. That really, really turns me off.
People just think they're doing it and because the other person, it'll make the other person feel better.
And it just makes the other person feel worse. It's like, just be on the same page about it. Be real about the time and effort you put into a friendship, and you know, kind of mirror the other person back and feel good about that. It's so true.
And I mean, if people want to like, I don't know, it's hard because sometimes like you realize like, oh, I don't jive with that person on the same level.
Totally.
And you have to like readjust your expectations of like what you'll get from them and how close you'll feel. But it is honestly like, I think, I know you say this, but like really like female friendships, like
everything,
they keep me alive.
No,
like
they literally are my lifeblood.
Yeah. Like what else am I gonna be entertained by if not like my friends?
I know. Meaning that, to end on this note, cut your friends slack and just be real about where you are, because then you want them, and you never know when they come back around. You know, I have friends where I wasn't close with them for a couple years. Now I live in the same city, and it's like we're going like crazy.
I have a friend from high school who just like randomly texted me a few weeks ago, and now we like talk all the time. Like we
exactly, and be open to those amazing, you know, synchronicities.
Exactly. I mean, it just it's good.
Sami Sage, thank you for being here. Everybody read Democracy in Retrograde. Where else can they find you?
At Sami on Instagram, at Sami Sage Says on TikTok and Blue Sky.
And Betches.
And Betches, right. Betches
everywhere.
News, at Betches. We have it all. Morning announcements, American Fever Dream podcast. I'm just everywhere.
I love it. By the way, can we talk about having 4-letter Insta handles?
Oh, yeah.
We're elite
Oh,
in
yeah.
that way.
How did that even... How did that even happen?
I had to blow someone really high up. I'm just kidding. That was a joke. All right. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. Bye.